I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen, one of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis.
Young people without jobs or even the prospect of jobs.
The UN is issuing a dire warning on climate change. It released a report compiled by some of the world's leading scientists, and it finds that nearly 1 million species are at risk of extinction because of humans.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
The human species is facing literally a decision as to whether to survive or not. It's never happened in human history.
Science requires a timetable for measuring progress on climate that isn't 3 decades or even 2. Science tells us we have 9 years before the damage is irreversible.
So we've known for a while that air pollution kills, obviously.
Unfortunately, in our lifetimes, we may experience the same fate as the dinosaurs. I'm talking about a nuclear war.
And if we allow the emergence of such total surveillance regimes, don't think that the rich and powerful in places like Davos will be safe.
Welcome to the session on how to survive the 21st century. It's not a new topic, but it's really getting urgent.
14 of the 15 warmest years on record have all fallen in the first 15 years of this century. I've heard some folks try to dodge the evidence by saying they're not scientists.
So risk for the world is the nuclear risk. Another risk for the world is obviously climate change. The third risk for the world is running out of resources. Either we solve it in the next 30 years or we'll never get to solve it. And then there's finally the world risk of inequality.
Artificial intelligence is software that writes itself. When is artificial intelligence going to be smarter than us people? My job to you is the wake-up call to make you aware of the problem. Your job is to figure out how we're going to stop this before it kills us.
I am David Attenborough, and I am 93. The living world is a unique and spectacular marvel. Yet the way we humans live on Earth is sending it into a decline. Human beings have overrun the world.
As you can see, there is already a high degree of consensus that the world is facing major issues on a planetary scale. Indeed, many unconsolidated groups try hard to raise the awareness about global problems since mid-20th century. However, there is still almost no success in taking adequate action against these dangerous global trends.
The world might really be getting close to collapse or approaching difficult times very, very quickly. I'm glad that awareness of this has grown and such alerts are no longer perceived as some hippie talking about the doomsday. There is more and more conversation around the globe around sustainability issues, which is exciting. We see all kinds of politicians, famous people, actors, scientists, scholars, looking at the issue from different angles. And that just demonstrates just how rich is the amount of intellectual capital already accumulated around these questions. It's not only from books of people like Jared Diamond or Yuval Harari, Noam Chomsky, from films like a recent film by David Attenborough, It's not only from messages by such individuals as Leonardo DiCaprio in his United Nations speech or Greta Thunberg in her UN speech, but it's also just the feeling, I'm sure you have that feeling too, that the world is moving too fast and we are no longer registering or even hope to register everything that's going on and how it's going to affect our life and the life of future generations. We kind of just hope that someone else somewhere does that. It reminds me of like a whirlpool in a sink. I'm sure you've seen when there is some water getting closer to the drain, it forms like a little whirlpool, and the whirlpool goes faster and faster and faster and faster the less water is left. And then it goes out. Or another good analogy could be like a small ice hole in the middle of a pond. The smaller the hole gets, the faster it fills up with ice. And ice is not coming just from one direction, it's coming from all directions.
At the same time, the rate at which the resources are being depleted only grows. This was coined by scholars as race to the bottom. Others call it the competition to lose last. As a result, humanity is on a clear path to a catastrophe, or more likely, a series of interdependent catastrophes. This will either completely wipe out, or vastly destroy the humanity in next few decades. This is basically our children.
There are thousands of distinguished scholars, companies, and political leaders that think and come up with ideas about fighting the global problems. There are millions of volunteers that already contribute their efforts and resources to tackling some of the global problems. There are thousands of local, regional, corporate, and countrywide programs that are aimed to slow down the global problems in whatever form it may be: overpopulation, poverty, deforestation, pollution, etc. However, these efforts are nowhere near where they need to be.
The main reason is the absence of consolidated focus that would lead to mandatory policies implemented around the globe. Without such policies, local commercial and political agendas will always prevail over the global needs. This is the nature of race to the bottom. Individual countries cannot make a meaningful difference and, instead, turn to compete with each other. The key reason for that is the so-called rational bad behavior problem, which basically means that individual countries hesitate to take major steps to alleviate the global problems, because they don't believe that their voluntary efforts, taken separately, will make substantial difference. That is why there needs to be a global response to these matters.
You see, the same way people don't understand what's going on and they hope somebody else does, and they don't know what to do and what they can do in their individual lives to help sustainability. I mean, okay, some of us will do a little bit of recycling, use better soap or something like that, but it's nice, but it's very, very little. Our life should consist of activities that are all centered around being sustainable. Then the effect geometrically grows. And just like people don't know, the same way the countries and the country leaders, they don't know what to do and they don't understand exactly what's going on. I'll give you another analogy. If you give a village a task of developing the military defense for its country, it sounds kind of ridiculous because, well, it's not the task for the village level. They can maybe cut down some wood and make sharp poles sticking out on the around the village or something like this. Maybe they can make some barricades out of piles of gravel, but it's not helping the country defense in a meaningful way, because a village cannot be tasked with something that is on the level of a country. Even a state cannot make a meaningful difference for defense of a country. Let's say we asked Oklahoma or Nebraska or Kansas or California to take meaningful steps to defend a country like United States. They will not only fail, but also they will have spent their resources on something they cannot do, while other states were doing something to better themselves and their economical position and whatnot. So the same way, actually, countries that are trying to solve global problems are meaninglessly wasting their resources, and what's more important, wasting precious time. Because countries are not meant to solve global problems, are incapable of solving global problems, the same way a village is incapable and not meant to solve countries' defense problems. It's kind of like kids cleaning the house. Unless their mom tells them to do so, they won't do it because they want to play. And if you let them, they will play all day. They don't understand or care why dirty house is not good for them. But our common house, our planet Earth, doesn't have a mom. It doesn't have anyone who can, with authority, tell the kids to clean up the house. So we're just running amok carelessly, and we think it's fine. We just don't have the thinking, the level of responsibility, nor the tools or the skills to stop this, to clean the house. We need the mom, some sort of global authority to tell us, the countries, what they need to do. Not on everything, of course, but on matters that affect global environmental stability.
With all my heart I believe that the world's present system of sovereign nations can only lead to barbarism, war, and inhumanity. Mankind's desire for peace can be realized only by the creation of a world government. Albert Einstein.
Whatever we call this, a global government, authority, United Crisis Task Force, global institution, in the end it's all the same. It needs to be an organization with wide decision-making powers.
On one hand, there is a global institution, the United Nations, but in reality, it doesn't work. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything bad about the United Nations. They're trying really hard to. However, they are not able to do a lot with the global problems because, understandably, countries don't want to delegate their decision-making power to somebody else. And that's at the root of this issue. They don't trust the United Nations and somebody else to do their decisions for them. And they're afraid, and frankly, it's not always working great. Whatever United Nations does, not everybody's going to be happy about it. So they, it's not working all the time, so they have all the reasons not to delegate those decision-making powers to United Nations. The environmental question becomes the political question, actually. It is also a sociological question, and it's a huge sociological challenge. And it's also an economics question, and also a huge challenge. But first and foremost, it's a political question. This video is not intended to dive into the economic questions too much. Not only they're huge, extremely broad, because to stop killing the environment will require no less than change our consumption patterns, lifestyles, and hence the economy and even the very economic principles.
But also, because such discussion requires an absolutely different forum, that consisting of multidisciplinary and multi-country representation. And also because these questions, however important, will never be addressed until there is a political will to do so. So the politics comes first.
All of this, to say, difficult is to say nothing. But what are the alternatives? Can someone not with political slogans and speeches, but with a paper, pencil, and calculator, explain to me how the levels of usage of resources, pollution, and climate change can be brought to a sustainable level without extreme changes? These changes, by the way, are not something terrible. For example, David Attenborough envisions in his new film, A Life on Our Planet, that these changes can bring about a much higher living standard. To do that requires major changes, and that definitely is going to lead to a lot of conflicts by definition. And without imperatives such as law, these conflicts will never be peacefully resolved. It requires policies to resolve questions that involve major conflicts. That's why the question of law, policies, politics comes first. So we're back to politics. So talking about politics and politicians, they have a difficult job, of course. They need to take care of their electorate, putting their interests first, and those often, very often, and actually most of the time, conflict with the planetary interests. Local individual interest, most of the time, conflicts with the global and planetary interests. Short-term interest, mostly conflicts with the long-term interest. And the only way that that housemaster can appear is by all countries willingly delegating some of their currently sovereign decision rights. Is that not difficult? It's incredibly difficult, because this will require politicians to do what their electorate has not asked them to do, what in fact their electorate entrusted them to have decision power over. So, of course they will say, no, I'm not giving this up. That would be wrong.
Let's consider an example. A country that has decided to abandon its coal-based power production in favor of solar production is very likely to put itself at a substantial disadvantage compared to other countries with whom it probably competes. Let's briefly examine these disadvantages. The discontinuation of coal plants is likely to cost the taxpayer or the business write-off losses, dismantling costs, severance pays. People will be laid off and will have to be on social care, retrained and possibly relocated. Cost of electricity is likely go up, affecting competitiveness of many products produced in that country. Enormous financial resources will need to be allocated, and so forth. And while all of this is happening, the competitor next door will continue happily burning coal to generate power and taking advantage of the situation, grabbing the market share and improving its market power. So the only viable solution to this problem is a mandate coming from a centralized decision maker to level the playing field. If you don't want to switch, you will pay a price that is equivalent to the losses incurred by the country that is switching, or higher.
this is exactly where we're coming from with this global referendum initiative. It's intended to help politicians justify and do what's right, which is get together and agree to delegate certain decision making to a higher level of authority. Once this is done, the ball will start finally rolling. Do the impossible and bring the world together and stand together behind the issue of sustainability.
Global Referendum Initiative objective is to motivate politicians around the globe to start actively work on the main problems of our planet. We believe that vast majority of world population understands that the planet is facing huge risks, but, due to lack of consolidated focus by politicians, these risks only pile up every year. This initiative's objective is to present United Nations with convincing evidence that people want to be heard on these issues through a global referendum. Such evidence can be presented by submitting millions of online votes. Once the referendum is officially held by the United Nations and its results are publicly and transparently disclosed, politicians on all levels and in all geographies will be strongly motivated to put these matters on the forefront of their agendas, almost by default. Politicians that refuse to follow suit will start automatically losing popularity. We, therefore, believe that transparent global referendum can serve as that very needed push to consolidate the planetary forces behind solving global problems.
We have the opportunity to lift the whole human race to a level of prosperity that few people have ever known. The future is not something that just happens. The future is created. The future is created out of the actions and the inactions of people just like me and you. We are the history of the future.
If you think about it, the villages agree to be part of a state, states agree to be a part of a country. So actually we're all very, very used to the idea of delegating higher level tasks to higher level of authority. We do it all the time. However, we don't do it for global problems. But on country level, we were able to eventually delegate to the federal government, for example. So somehow people did figure out a way to delegate something upwards. I'm not a historian, so I can't say how countries formed. I know a little bit about it, but not so much. Was it always done by war and by force? If so, in that case, the only way to consolidate the world and to unite the world is through war. But I'm sure you will agree that no war can be won on a global level. And there will be no winners in such a war, especially considering the type of weaponry that humans have developed. Maybe we can learn, and can we think of another way to consolidate our decision-making powers? On a sad note, I don't believe this is going to work. I don't think it has any substantial chances, but at the same time, I feel that I need to try. Yeah, and so why do I say that I don't believe this is going to be successful? Well, because in my 20 plus years in business, realized just how hard it is to get anything done. And the main reason for that is because there are always conflicts involved. There are thousands of smart and creative people with millions of ideas that complement each other and help to rapidly clean up the planet. And just like good mom can be trusted to be fair and caring about all of her kids, same way this global authority can be trusted to be fair. For example, there are countries whose whole economy depends on carbon fuel production and sales. And they're not bad guys, by the way. They have been warming, moving, and building this world for the last 2 centuries. We should thank them for this. And we need to find a wise way to phase them out of carbon gradually and painlessly, whatever the cost. It is not their problem to solve, and their populations do not deserve to be victimized. We need to pull together.
To develop and empower such global body, the following is needed. Step 1 is consolidation of people's will on global scale. This can be officially achieved through the global referendum. Step 2 would be the creation of the Global Congress, Authority, Task Force, or whatever you please to call it. It can be formed on the basis of UN, but what is key is to have substantial decision-making powers. Step 3 would be gathering and assessment of ideas. This would need to include a wide array of representatives from different countries, industries, and various disciplines. Following this would be setting of priorities, development of the implementation plan, and allocation of resources. Finally, we are on to execution and control stage.
Hi, my name is Dimitri, and I'm sitting here in a beautiful natural park in the Balkans in the mountains region. Really enjoying the nature, good weather, walking around a lot. And I've decided to make this video. Actually, about 6 months ago, I quit my job, quit my career, which was quite successful. I was managing a large and growing business, international business based out of London. And one of the main reasons why I did that was because I have a calling. I realized I have a calling to do something about making our world more sustainable, our civilization living in more sustainable ways. And the reason I realized this was because I was thinking about it all the time. When I was doing a program at the University of Michigan, I had a couple of classes in sustainability. That was 12 years ago, and time flies, and I can't believe that 12 years I've done almost nothing about what I actually care so much about. So when I was turning 40 in 2016, I made myself a small birthday gift by establishing a website and a Facebook page devoted to ideas that I discuss with you in this video. But that's about all I did. And that was, I shared it with a couple of friends. But then another 4 years went by and nothing was happening, and the progress is too slow. There's a lot of talking about the climate change, global warming, pollution, resource extraction, overpopulation, and other issues, but very little is done, and every day the situation is getting worse. So at some point I said, okay, if you want to do something about it and you want to be serious about it, you have to, give it a real try and, try to work on it full time. Like I said, I don't believe that this is going to work, and sometimes I call myself like a stupid idealist or something, a person who is believing in something that's never going to happen. Kind of like, who do you think you are that you are proposing to do a global referendum and ask people of the whole planet about our future? But well, I am a thinking person. I've spent 44 years living on this planet and watching what's going on. I traveled in half the world. I've been to over 50 countries, and I spent a lot of time there and speaking with different people and being very attentive. And I know a thing or two about economics. I have a couple of degrees in business. I know quite a bit about history and culture because that's what interested me for many years. Although the endeavor is very grand, but I can't help but at least try. And at the same time, the idea of consolidating the voice of people on a global level, it's not new. It's not new. We had several people mentioning this, but I think what's missing is how we're going to consolidate that voice, and the global referendum initiative is about that. What is benefiting someone is probably hurting somebody else. And the art of getting something done, actually, more than anything, is about making compromises and navigating through difficult issues so that you find win-win solutions. That's one of the most difficult, but also one of the most rewarding things. I think the key to making sustainability on top of every agenda, on top of everyone's mind, is actually about finding win-win solutions and resolving the conflicts that are inherent to this problem. And kind of the same way what's happening now on our planet is while we are running around faster and faster and faster, having busier and busier life because of constant communication with somebody over all kinds of devices and media, we require more and more resources all the time. We have more and more people living on a planet, and every person wants more than the persons in previous generations. So the acceleration at which we use resources and generate all kinds of different problems increases, and the number of these problems increases. So it's really the pace at which the planet in general gets depleted is increasing. It kind of feels to me that the world is approaching very, very difficult times, potentially a collapse.
Let's join together, fight this holy Armageddon. When the man comes, there will be no doom. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner. There ain't no hiding place from the Father of creation. We got one love, one love, one heart, one heart. So let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Asihlanganeni sonke sibe munye.